is a sixth dimension beyond that which is known to man. A multiverse as vast as eternity, as timeless as the Infinity Gems. It is the middle ground between the big two and the indie publishers, between sci-fi and mysticism, and it lies between the pages of the reader's imagination. At the summit of entertainment, the dimension of comics, where a humble service is held. We call this service the Gospel of Comics.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Gospel of Comics. I am your host, The Church of Failure, and with me, as always, my trusty co-host, Ayrton McCartney. And joining us today, returning guest co-host, Larry Bernard, a.k.a. Carousel. How are you guys doing today?
Oh, I'm just making myself laugh over here with the hashtags and my quote tweet for the show. So
I am also doing okay.
All right.
How about you, buddy? You wanna tell us about your little adventure into some exotic cooking?
Yeah, I mean, I never had rare chicken before. I didn't know that it was a thing. But apparently some people like to undercook chicken and feed it to you at a restaurant.
And you sound a little bit like you're sticking your head in the toilet just in case.
Well, I have been doing that for the past 2 days, so...
Oof.
Yeah, it's no good. It's no good.
And it's got me a little spooked, because I cook salmon like 4 or 5 nights a week, and I really don't want to get salmonella poisoning.
Yeah, just cook everything thoroughly, properly. Don't rush it. If it takes a little longer, it takes a little longer. That's the rule. Mellow Link in the chat, how's it going? He and oh man, I'm already gonna regret this. He and Racist Data are gonna come on next week to talk about comics with us. They had Denny on, and I didn't know that Data did a show, and I stumbled across it when they had Denny on, and Denny was kind enough to promote our show, so I invited them on to talk Western and Eastern comics with us.
Ooh.
The first
sounds
lesson,
like a great show.
The first lesson, Mellow Link, is anything since 2000 is awful. That's pretty much the rule. There have been exceptions to the rule, but the rule is that it's awful.
Which I do think you should probably put the suicide prevention hotline number up on the screen for people as we jump into these topics today.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, you should
1-800 Dominoes.
feature that.
Yes.
1-800 Dominoes. If you're feeling a little down, just get yourself a Meat Lovers or a Supreme deep dish, and that'll take care of it for you.
Exactly.
So, Larry, you brought this topic to our attention because I've done my best to avoid it like the plague. Marvel, apparently, having completely run out of ideas, has decided that they are not only going to revisit the Clone Saga, but also
but with Miles Morales this time.
Yeah.
So that's almost different.
Yeah, no, it really isn't. But I had a Sicilian for dinner, so I'm good. All right, yeah. As long as you're good.
So we're featuring Heroes Reborn again, but not Marvel going, hey, you know what? We're almost bankrupt. Let's get some really prominent creators from outside our space and give them some of our flagship characters. No, we're not going to do that because that might at least be interesting.
Well, before we jump into the new hero, why don't we take a step back in time to a place where Heroes Reborn was actually pretty interesting. Do you remember the original Heroes Reborn, Larry? Were you reading at that time?
I was. We all remember Rob's Captain America, and in Rob
We've actually
defense,
we featured that on this show before.
And in Rob's defense, the big boobied Captain America was not something he drew. It was not in the comic. It was in some promotional art.
No, but Captain America being 8'7".
There we go.
Yeah.
Got that up on the screen for everyone. That's your Captain America. How's it going, Darb? Good to see you, buddy.
Now, Jim Lee's Iron Man was pretty good.
But what? All right. So, Heroes Reborn came about right after the Onslaught Saga.
Right, and it also was connected to Marvel's bankruptcy.
We'll talk about that side because I know the story side of it, but not the bankrupt side of it.
Well, Marvel was running out of money. They talked about, possibly farming out characters to Image. And so this little offer was them getting some people they had good relationships with from Image to do 4 characters that had historically been popular, but we're having a little bit of an oopsie doopsie time.
Right.
And that was part of what all came together with this whole Onslaught Heroes Reborn nonsense.
Well, the storyline version is during the Onslaught Saga, which, for those of you that don't know, Onslaught was an amalgamation of... Let me pull this Captain America thing down. It's making me uncomfortable.
I'm starting to get a chubby.
Yeah, I know you are. X-Men had a giant crossover event called the Onslaught Saga, where Magneto and Professor X kind of did the fusion dance, sort of, but not really.
Basically, all the worst parts of their psyches merged into a psychic baby.
Yeah, and that psychic baby was
Comics are weird.
Mecha Magneto. And that giant Mecha Magneto was all powerful, basically. And he just went around
for a
killing
reason.
Everything. Yeah, he just went around killing everything. He destroyed the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, and Doctor Doom. Basically, in the end, Franklin Richards, the All-Father in Marvel Comics, opened a pocket universe where he had been saving everyone to come back. And that led into the story arc of Heroes Reborn. So, and like Larry said, Marvel farmed out some of their properties to former employees that had left the comic to form Image. Jim Lee did Fantastic Four and Iron Man. Rob Liefeld took on the Avengers and Captain America. Marvel apparently ended Liefeld's contract early because of low sales on his titles.
And also, poor work rate, allegedly.
Yeah, Walt Simonson took over the Avengers. It was a lot of politics and backroom stuff. Mark Waid was involved. And, it actually was fairly successful in the grand scheme of things. It led to some pretty interesting things. A few pretty good books and restarts to some stuff. But eventually it just kind of went back into normalcy and everything just kind of continued as it was at Marvel Comics because they had another they eventually had to do another event because, well, that's what Marvel do.
And look, we need to have all of these characters back for this event, so we need to set up an event to bring them back, and then have that event set it up so we could do the next event.
Well, it was one of the times, comic book deaths meant nothing. And that's because it was very, very huge that Onslaught was able to basically run roughshod over the entire Marvel universe. And then Franklin Richards just pulls out the plot device and brings everybody back in one panel. It was a good panel, don't get me wrong, but really showed that there was no point whatsoever the entire thing.
So what you're saying is you thought Marvel was creatively bankrupt then, if only you realized just how bad it actually was.
No, I didn't think they were creatively. It was one of the first times that I realized death in comics means absolutely nothing. There was no weight to any of the deaths during the Onslaught saga. And it was, to me, it felt worse at the time. I know we're getting off topic, but it felt worse at the time because I had also, like, this is right after the, God, what was the Age of Apocalypse era. The Age of Apocalypse was early 90s. And even though everything kind of went back to status quo after that, everything had a lot more weight to it because in that universe where Age of Apocalypse was taking place, you didn't really get anybody being brought back. Like, the world was just fucked there. Whereas here, they're just like, oh shit, we got to put all the toys back in the toy box before mom comes home. But anyway, a couple of days ago, browsing the twatters, I run across Heroes Reborn.
Heroes Reborn 2021 in big orange print.
Yeah.
Oh, is that a horrible graphic?
It is.
Just
It is.
for starters.
It is. And the first image I saw of it, I think it was Perch that brought it up. It was either Perch or God, who else? Thinking Critical, maybe. Sorry, I forgot who it was. It's been a rough couple of days. But the first image that I saw of it, yeah, it was Doom or Not. And the question that I have is this Kane Marco as Dr. Doom? Is this Dr. Doom who set aside his ego and become a servant of Sidorak? What am I looking at?
Is it Dr. Doom who's defeated Sidorak and claimed his power?
No, because he wouldn't need the Crimson Gem if that had happened. The Crimson Gem basically makes you subservient, like in continuity. Like if we're sticking with what we know about the character.
Hold up. It's 2021 Marvel. Why would things be in continuity?
Because that's still. I get what you're saying, but because if it was in continuity, it wouldn't make me as angry as I'm sure it's going to make me.
I mean, it looks like Dr. Doom stole the Crimson Gem and then also one of Iron Man's suits from the 60s.
Well, here's the thing, though. I think this is what a lot of normies aren't going to get. That goes against Doom's ethos. Doom is not subservient to anybody.
Right.
Doom would never become the servant of Sidorak. He would attack Sidorak and take his power. Don't get me wrong. But that doesn't make you Juggernaut. Juggernaut is a earthly servant of Sidorak. So the idea of Victor Von Doom just putting his ego aside, saying, yes, I want Juggernaut's power, so I will do Sidorak's bidding and cause chaos for him. No. Maybe Doom would take the Crimson Bands of Sidorak to fight Sidorak with. That's some cocky shit that he might do. Mm-hmm. But, you know, then you see on the knuckles, you've got Doom spelled out. And you made a point, Larry. What would that do when you punch somebody?
It's a mood on their forehead.
Yes. I feel like there's a rap lyric in there about mood rings, but you know, I'm entirely too exhausted to come up with it right now. Now, digging a little further into this, oh goodness, oh no, there's an upset child. Hold on, you guys continue.
Yeah, so other art, some stuff that involves a redrawn alpha flight that doesn't look very good.
He's using that term loosely, folks.
Yeah. And and the reason this came to my attention is something that we should bring up, and I'm going to try to draw this process out as much as possible for Church to deal with his family situation.
Yeah.
Is Marvel does too many events, and their events don't really accomplish anything, and they don't really stand out anymore. Like, they had an event that was all about the High Evolutionary trying to evolve the planet. In the old days, they had an event about, Atlantis leading armies to take over the world.
They had the event about the Inhumans basically trying to genocide all the mutants.
Yeah. Events used to mean something. Now there are things like, where Asgard was attacking Earth for some reason.
Or becoming part of
Even though
Oklahoma.
it would never happen.
Yeah.
Well, it's like you said, they've just become so frequent and, just over the top.
Nondescript. They're
like,
over the top, but they're also nondescript.
Everything's an event now. You can't just have, like, a story arc. Like, they're making events out of things that could be handled in 4-issue miniseries.
Yeah.
Now, moving on to the next cover that I've got pulled up here, it looks like we've got the Enchantress and Scarlet Witch hybrid. I don't know.
What do they do? What do they do to Enchantress and Scarlet Witch? What do they do to them?
What do you mean? You didn't see
combining them
up on screen. Is Scarlet Witch
combining them.
Yeah, it's Scarlet Witch in the Enchantress's costume, basically. That's the way they did that. You've got instead of being the Fantastic Four, you've got Reed Richards and Ben Grimm as agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Seemingly sans Fantastic Four powers. So basically, you could just write an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. book and have a big guy and a brainy guy and have the same story without fucking up the Fantastic Four in the process.
Yes, but
maybe
why
Sue Storm's also. Oh, go ahead.
Well, why wouldn't Marvel want to fuck up the Fantastic Four? Hasn't that been their trend line for the last 5 years?
It's been their trend line since, for
5 years.
5-6 years, yeah. No, Secret Wars 2015, yeah, it was basically all about telling the Fantastic Four to go fuck themselves.
All right, yeah.
We're just going to send them into space because we don't own the movie rights for them.
And they'll come back eventually.
Yeah. You've got Peter Parker, it seems, hanging out on the Daily Bugle looking like Jimmy Olsen, either turning into a superhero with yellow boots or photographing them. I don't know.
Possibly having a foot fetish.
Yeah, we got to figure out that guy.
I swear to God, if they turn Peter Parker into a foot fetishist, I'm throwing hands with everybody at Marvel.
We've already turned him into a bisexual.
Yeah, foot fetishist is worse.
Okay. This is my favorite one. We got Thanos, instead of with an Infinity Gauntlet, he's wearing Mandarin rings. And somebody wrote an article and it said Thanos and Mandarin. Manos, Hands of Fate. Anyone? Anyone?
Hey, you know what? I was just thinking, maybe those yellow boots were Sentry.
Maybe. I don't understand what the fuck that has to do with Peter Parker, but sure.
Well, no, in Sentry's book, Peter Parker did a big picture of him, and that was like a big plot device element.
Oh, okay. I have no idea what's going on with this Hulk book. I don't know what they've done to Hulk or why it's just Hulk. Like, I wonder who they're going to have be the Hulk. But I'm sure it'll be awful.
Because they don't know what to do with Hulk.
Yeah, the covers aren't terrible. I will say that. Like, the cover art isn't awful. It's nothing special, but it's not, straight terrible.
It's like an average 1970s comic book cover.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's very house style. Everything's very similar. You've got Coulson. Apparently, Coulson for president. I don't know why. Where did the worship for Bill Coulson come from? And then,
Where did it not? Because why not?
last but not least, a very bastardized version of Alpha Flight. And Wolverine has cybernetic pieces for some reason.
Yeah, because
why does
haven't done
Sasquatch
that
have
one
horns?
before.
Why does what?
Why does Sasquatch have horns?
Because why not? But it just, I don't know. It feels like they tried to redo Amalgam and labeled it Heroes Report. You remember Amalgam?
Well, I mean, they've been talking about doing another amalgam or another. What was the one with DC and Marvel characters crossing over?
That was Amalgam.
Amalgam.
That was Marvel versus DC. Hey, damn, baby.
But
It
yeah,
was Marvel
that's-
versus DC. I think that was what, 1994 and
Mhm.
No, it was 96 and 97. And then it was 96 and 97, and it was like 2 or 3 different releases. But that was actually pretty cool. You got shit like Darkclaw, the Batman Wolverine mix. You got Super Soldier, Captain America. And that was actually mixing together different Marvel superheroes. Not really anything that couldn't have been done in a What If comic book. Right?
Well, you know, they did that already. With they've done that like a year or two ago. They did something like that.
Did they?
Yeah.
I was out of the loop.
I mean, nobody read it. It was terrible.
Okay. Arcana Seinbrecht in the chat says a large part of it is power creep. The heroes are way too powerful now, so they have to keep upping the ante for opponents
No.
until suddenly, oh look, Odin
No.
wants to nuke Midgard. He's talking about
No,
he's talking about Asgard attacking Earth.
right. But I mean, that's also no. That you don't have to do that.
No, you don't have to, but that's what they did.
Right, because they've run out of ideas and they've hired terrible people.
Yes, I don't disagree with that.
I mean, I am literally making as much money now as an assistant editor at Marvel. I would definitely do a better job.
You hear that, Marvel? Yeah, I'm sure he'll send you his resume.
I don't think
I
you
will.
need to send a resume.
I mean, the
Yeah.
people who are currently assistant editors at Marvel don't seem to have a resume.
Okay,
But
just
the reason-
just send them your pulse so they know
Exactly.
like you're living.
But the reason I brought this to church and everybody's attention is we can all come up with a better event, and that's a classic thing comic fans do is they come up with better ideas than what actually gets made.
Yeah.
So I
Well,
was wondering,
let's don't paint that as a broad brush. A lot of fan fiction is terrible.
yeah, but I mean, there's a lot. But we're talking about it's like what if Sonny Liston fought fought Mike Tyson, kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
It's a similar kind of thing.
That's fair.
So I was thinking, what if we were to just do some Marvel events? Since Marvel doesn't have ideas.
We'll make our own Marvel event with blackjack and hookers.
Yeah, basically. I mean, I think I've already covered one. Instead of doing events for shitty ideas like this, why don't you just take all your bad ideas and do like you used to and run them through the what if category? Remember what
Well, no,
if?
what if was actually good ideas though normally?
No,
But not
I know.
good enough.
I get that, and if they sold well and people were very receptive of them, and they sold out a second and third printing,
they might explore the actual what if in a Marvel story. And it was a good grade of, okay, well, this idea is really great. People really seem to love this. And because
that is how we got Lady Thor.
well, I mean, no, we got Lady Thor because somebody at Marvel read a what if comic book and they were like, why didn't people like this the first time? We're going to do it again until they like it.
Fair enough.
So
it was well past the publication date. People probably liked the what if book, but not enough for it to become a real thing. But yeah, my idea would be, instead of doing an event every other week, why don't we just reopen the what if game and say, okay, well, when you're a new writer at Marvel, guess what your first book's going to be? Guess what every new idea you have is going to be? It's going to be a what if book, you prick. And if people don't like it, we're not going to fucking do it.
I mean, that would be a great way to break in new writers, is to have a regular anthology series that it's like, hey, bam, here you go.
Mm-hmm.
And you partner them up with the senior artist who could, coach them a little bit. That would be an intelligent thing to do. But no, I was thinking we describe a Marvel event, and then we explore that idea a little bit more. That could be a good way to do some YouTube time. So I have an idea.
Okay.
Doctor Doom wants something, and so he's going to manipulate everybody because that's what Doctor Doom does.
Mm-hmm.
So because Doctor Doom has manipulated everybody, Nick Fury has deployed Captain America and Iron Man to work as secret undercover spies, trying to get into the heart of what Doctor Doom is doing. Mm-hmm. So they go to Spider-Man and Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, and say, hey, listen, we need you two to step up and be bigger leaders on the Avengers team. So this big Doom event is going to, in the Avengers book, be focused on Pete learning that, you're not just the lovable loser. You've been at this for 20-something years. You're actually extremely capable at this, and you need to get over yourself. Mm. And Carol Danvers learning, nobody really likes you. You're a terrible person. You have bad social skills, and you need to get good if you're wanting to become the leader and be this person that you've told everybody that you are. And you have Thor.
And this is where I think I jumped in and saw you tweeting out your thread and was reading it and laughing.
Yeah, and you have Thor acting as sort of the guy who's there who represents the old school sort of Avengers notion. And he's, trying to supervise them, but Thor has his own Thor problems elsewhere that he's dealing with, which we'll get to in the Thor portion of this event book. So you guys are with me so far with the Avengers and how this affects Spider-Man and Captain Marvel. Well, for Spider-Man, it goes a little bit deeper. So Pete goes to Ghost Spider, a.k.a. Gwen Stacy, mm-hmm. and goes to Miles and says, hey, listen, guys, I'm not really going to have a whole lot of time to, do the Spider-Man thing in New York City anymore because I need to step up here on the Avengers. So I need you guys to fill in. So what's going to be happening in this portion of the event is the Spider-Man Rogues Gallery is going to, divide. Certain people in Spider-Man's Rogues Galleries are, more appropriate for Spider-Man's current supervillain profile, and other ones aren't. And the other ones who aren't are going to be like going, hey, we can totally F the shit out of these two kids. And that's going to be the plot.
Phrasing.
But you don't want to, they're but yeah, so it's going to be all about a bunch of villains trying to punk two young superheroes who they don't think have what it takes. And also these villains are going to be kind of a little angry that Peter's like, the regular Spider-Man is too big of a deal for them. Yeah. So that's going to also tie into some of the stuff involving the Avengers, possibly new Masters of Evil. So you're with me so far on all this.
Yeah.
New Sinister Six, absolutely. So what's going on is Doom is trying to get various raw materials and technology to do something. It doesn't even matter what it is he's doing, but Tony is there to try to draw his attention. And as Tony's there, he realizes that Doom is slowly manipulating Atlantis, Wakanda, all the other major superheroes, only world powers, into some sort of a war with each other.
I gotta
Wait, Wakanda's allowed to be manipulated?
Well,
Yes.
I've got to interrupt you a little bit here and say that
something very similar to this has already been done.
Mhm.
What was the name of it? It was where Doom basically convinced all the supervillains to go after other characters.
Acts of Vengeance, but
Yes.
this is the Spider-Man thing is similar to Acts of Vengeance, except though they were already on Spider-Man's ticket, and so since they're new super.
What I'm saying is we can stay on brand with Marvel's current naming scheme and just call it Acts of Vengeance too.
Well, I mean, you can maybe sub-brand the event that. You can maybe sub-brand the event that. That'd be good for marketing. So yeah, and so Captain America is going to be all undercovery and Jason Bourne, and he's trying to get into the heart of Latveria, and Captain America is getting to see what it's like to live under an absolute dictator who's also,
even might
potent.
even bring out the old nomad guys to keep from flying the flag.
Exactly. So that's what's going on with those characters there. So we are also going to have the Fantastic Four. There's a war in space that's going on, and Doom has convinced the world governments that Captain Marvel is not capable of doing her job of being their protector from things in outer space. And so the United States government
handed them her resume.
Exactly. So Reed and et al. Are going to deal with, the Kree, the Shi'ar, and the usual aliens that always keep having problems but never end up being an actual threat to Earth at the end of the day. While Carol is protesting that this is my job, Sword's my agency, and they're like, listen, you're on thin ice, kid. We need to have a talk with you about your actions. But of course, in reality, this is Doom getting accursed Richards out of his hair.
right.
And Doom is also manipulating these other space powers for whatever Doom's purpose is in this plot.
Right.
Again, Doom's purpose isn't as important as the fact that it's Doom manipulating everybody. That's what's going on. Let's see. We have the X-Men version of this, which is a little bit different. Leandra shows back up on Earth with Charles Xavier, and she's, tells the kids, hey, listen, I need to lay low here. Things are kind of bad in the Shire Galaxy. And she convinces a group of young, new mutant characters that, hey, we should go run off, and I got a whole bunch of spare planets in my empire. We could just make a planet just for mutants. Wouldn't that be great?
With hookers and blackjack.
I feel like we've done this before.
Well, hold up. Yes, they've done this before because the X-Men is kind of like the X-Men is kind of they've been around a while. They've done a few things, but these new kids go off with Xavier and Leandra, and all of the established people on the X-Men team are like, God, this is a terrible idea. Bishop's going, am I going to fight a techno-organic alien race in another galaxy again? Yes, Bishop. Yes, you are. So a team goes off. So a team goes off to hunt that down, but Scott Summers is like going, you guys go do that. Gene, you take charge of that team. I think something else is going on. So he gets another team with like Magic and Danny Moonstar and some other characters, and they go to Asgard because Scott Summers suspects Loki is behind all of this.
Okay.
And so they go into Asgard, and you have, couple of mutants who actually have standing in the Asgardian court going, hey, we need to talk to Loki. And they're like going, yeah, we all need to talk to Loki. He's been screwing up more than normal. Misadventures happen. They capture Loki. And Loki's like, whoa, wait. There's a situation. I'm doing this thing because Doom tricked me, but I can help you. I know where Xavier and Leandra are. they're going to the Shire Galaxy. Well, no. Doom sold them to Mephisto. And so that team...
A lot of ins, a lot of outs to this so far. You're now, I think that the one thing we've got to get back to is not... Like, that's one of my problems with all of these events. Like, do you know what is considered the first Marvel event, Larry?
What is the first Marvel event, Church?
The wedding of Sue Storm and Reed Richards.
I mean, yeah, kind of, sort of.
That's technically billed as the first major crossover event in Marvel Comics. And you know what made it so simply sweet and wonderful?
I would call that the first crossover because technically the Avengers' first story was the first crossover.
That's why I use that major word in front of it. It was the first major crossover event. Not just a crossover, but a title. Crossover event had a storyline revolving around all the characters for some reason.
Right.
And as we've gotten older, events have become this thing kind of like what you're describing, where it's completely line wide, and I think that's an issue. Because here's the thing. There's a contingent of people out there who just want to read Moon Knight comic books. There's a contingent of people out there who just want to read Spider-Man comic books. And with the type of events that Marvel has been doing lately, if you read Spider-Man comic books, you're going to have to get involved in if you read anything Marvel and you read it religiously, you have to get involved in every event that they have because every fucking character is somehow tangential to the story. And that feels really unnecessary for me because when it gets that big, it really should just be contained within its own series. Like, it should be an Elseworld type thing, or not even an Elseworld type thing, but I don't think the line needs to be bogged down with stuff like that. I mean, there were over 200 titles in Civil War. There were over 300 books in Secret Wars 2015. It gets to be too much, and I feel like if you're gonna do something like that, then it should be a title. Like, it should be a monthly book or a bi-monthly book.
Right.
Whatever. It shouldn't be that big. And I think that's part of the issue. Because who the hell, in today's economy, who can afford $205 books in a 6-month time frame?
Or who can review 400 and some books for World War Hulk when they're first starting out their comic book YouTube channel?
Right. I mean, that sounds like a nightmare.
We wouldn't know anything about that.
No, not at all. But yeah, I think that's the problem.
The thing about my idea is the reason I came up with my idea the way I did is it's completely modular. You could just separate things.
Right. And
and the stories are sound on their own 2 feet.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, I don't have a problem with that, and it could create a lot of jobs at Marvel, or allow for a lot of new talent to get their feet wet, or old talent to get a boost while new talent gets their feet wet elsewhere. But my whole thing is, I feel like events need to be more contained than they are. I don't think that Spider-Man, the Amazing Spider-Man title, should be interrupted by an event. If you're going to make an event, then you have the Amazing Spider-Man continue on as normal, singular storytelling, 3-issue arcs kind of thing that might culminate into a big, line-wide thing, overarching, whatever. But series-wide thing, overarching. But then you have X of Vengeance 2 Spider-Man as a separate title that the guy that's read Amazing Spider-Man from issue 1 doesn't have to buy. And if he does buy it and he gets interested in it, that's all he has to buy to enjoy Acts of Vengeance 2 Spider-Man. You get what I'm saying? Like, I feel like it needs to be a little more secular. I feel like stopping the current flow of any book for the sake of an event is part of the problem that has has really permeated in Marvel.
So let's
Darb in the chat says, I want some single character team comics. All these comics that require almost all of Marvel to beat the big bad are really annoying in my opinion. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, even if it does require all of Marvel,
Yeah, man, have a good night. If it really does require all of Marvel, then it definitely shouldn't interrupt all of Marvel. When they did it best, I think, with Secret Wars 2015, and I know I'm biased towards that, but the way they did that was in order to create Battle World, they literally stopped the line. They literally shut down every book and stopped it, put it on hold, put it on hiatus, rebooted it, whatever, when the event was over. But Secret Wars 2015 was its own self-contained thing. You might not get a Spider-Man book for 6 months if you don't want to read Secret Wars, but when you pick up Spider-Man after it, you don't have to know anything about Secret Wars to know why we're here.
But then, what was the point of Secret Wars?
To shake up the line. I mean, it
if
brought
you don't
Miles
need
into the
to know
mainstream.
about it, right? But I mean, if you don't need to know about it to know what's going on, then what was the point?
It told a great story, and it wrapped up Hickman's run on Fantastic Four and Avengers. It was a love letter to comic books. I mean, I will maintain that it was probably one of the best events Marvel has ever done. The story was very well knit together. Now, you didn't have to read every tie-in in it. You really only needed the 9 issues of Secret Wars. But the fact that they were going to do all the tie-ins and, use all the characters and bring back all of these eras, I think it was a good move that instead of interrupting Amazing Spider-Man, they just ended it, and then they put a title out called Amazing Spider-Man Renew Your Vows, where they brought back Mayday Parker as a child.
Mm-hmm. But so if you had to do an event for Marvel, if they were paying you money to edit an event, then how would you do it?
I'd go back to the old days, man. I'd go back to the days of, a 12-issue maxi series with maybe 1 or 2 one-shots tacked on. Short, sweet, to the point, maybe a couple of double issues, something that could be collected in 2 or 3 trades total. And it would be a standalone book. It wouldn't be, like something that I've always kind of wanted to see was, an X-Men story that focused around the mutants kind of having their own little civil war. I know it's kind of happened already before, but, I'd really like to see what a grand scale evil versus good mutant battle would be.
And this would happen outside of the mainstream X-Men continuity.
No, it wouldn't happen outside of it per se, but it wouldn't be in the X-Men titles that were ongoing. It just they wouldn't be affected because back then a lot of those titles were just episodic. They didn't have a concrete time frame. It wasn't, the last book happened in January, this book's happening in February. The event happened simultaneously with the ongoing stories, and neither one of them were affected by it. Just like you could have a Spectacular Spider-Man and an Amazing Spider-Man, and a lot of the time, neither one of them had shit to do with the other. But basically, you would have an X-Men Civil War, and it would be a 12-issue maxi series. Magneto would have a change of heart, flip sides in the apocalypse. The evil mutants would come together against the good mutants. There would be some soul searching. There would be some heel turns. And after your 12 issues and maybe 5 or 6 one-shots, just kind of side stories that happened within this event. That's it. No 300 books, no Everybody is affected. No, what were the Avengers doing? Who gives a shit? This is an X-Men story. If you want to mention the Avengers of something they're doing off screen or why they're not getting involved or, what they're busy doing during the time just to kind of explain them away, that's your prerogative. But as a writer, you shouldn't have to have the Avengers to tell an X-Men story, right? You use the Inhumans if you want to. You can bring in whoever you want to, but keep it in these 12 issues. And if you can't get it done in 12 issues, then you can't do it. I think a big problem is this whole we have to have the entire line to do anything, to tell any story. That's just weak storytelling, in my opinion. If you can't tell a Spider-Man story without having to have Captain Marvel and Iron Man and Captain America and the Hulk, then you don't need to be telling a Spider-Man story. If you can't tell an Avengers story without the X-Men and Alpha Flight and fucking Sword, Shield, Hammer, Oscorp, AIM, Hydra, and everybody else just checking in on them, then you don't need to tell the story. You don't need to coordinate an entire comic line to tell a story. I mean, it's cool when you can pull it off, but it doesn't need to be a yearly, every 6-month thing, because I think that's what led to the decline of people wanting to read comics. I mean, it doesn't make sense to continue throwing your fucking spaghetti against the wall to see what sticks while you lose readers because they can't keep up with all your bullshit.
Okay, Ayrton, what do you think about events here in the context of what we're doing for a discussion?
I mean, so overall, I'm sick of them.
I mean, yes.
Like-
If Marvel and DC could learn one thing, it's less is more when it comes to events. Like maybe one a year, maybe two.
I would do maybe one every few years, if anything. If you were going to do a whole line thing, you can maybe tease some stuff. If you have some head editor or whatever, it's okay, this is kind of our ideal we want to build to in 3 years. So you can put in little hints and stuff in your books kind of in the background and shit. And we can build it to some big, I would just do one, 12 issues, shut down everything else, 12 issues. If you want to throw the whole fucking Marvel cast in there, sure, do it, but condense it down. Goddamn, it's. I would personally rather read a solid 6 or 12 issue mini or maxi series versus a huge overarching event, because it's so much. You have to keep track of all this shit. I don't know how. I don't know how Church can keep track of all of the different plot points and character elements and stuff from all the Secret Wars lines. I know maybe a couple of them because I've only read a few of them. I haven't read the whole damn thing because it's too much. Especially, I'm the more kind of casual comic book reader on this panel here out of the three of us, and I would much prefer if you could condense everything down. Like I said, maybe build to it over a couple of years. That's kind of cool. How the Marvel movies kind of built to the Infinity War movie, kind of throwing little hints in there as they built it. Something like that is how I would prefer they do it. Don't do something every year. That's too much. Stretch it out a little bit. Give us time to breathe. Make it that's what an event is. It's supposed to be something that's special, essentially, right? You don't get it all the time. So when it's announced that it's coming, it builds more hype to it. Stuff like that. You put your top writers, your top artists throw everybody else, have them work at a toll booth for a few months while they're laid off, and then they can come back. That's how you should do it.
I've got a web page pulled up in the background here. There's a website called comicbookreadingorders.com.
And it gives you the chronological
Yes.
reading order of any event. And you were familiar with Age of Apocalypse, right, Larry?
I am.
That felt really big, right?
It did, but it was really, really condensed.
That was 60 issues. Okay. That was back in 95. In 2015, Secret Wars 2015 was 230 issues. Civil War 2 was 152 issues.
Of which maybe one were good.
But and now I'm going to scroll back up to the top here. Let's see. Inferno, that was a good series. Atlantis Attack, Acts of Vengeance. We just got done talking about that, right?
Yeah.
71 issues. Okay. All of these books are line-wide books. Maybe Age of Apocalypse is just X-Men because they restarted so many titles, but there was a lot of X-Men books going on at the time. So, but yeah, you had one or two issues, and that might be acceptable as well. I would honestly say if your event spanned the line and it only ate up one or two issues of everything to the point
You'll be fine.
Yeah, for the point where maybe for 2 months you were dealing with this event, but everything worked well as a standalone, title. Like you didn't have to know what the hell was going on in New Mutants to understand what was going on in Spectacular Spider-Man. That's acceptable. But when it gets into 4 and 5, like with Civil War, you had 6 issues of Iron Man, 2 issues of the Hulk, 2 issues of Wolverine, Civil War 2, Ulysses, 6 issues of that, Deadpool, 5 issues, Spider-Man 2099, 4 issues. It's too much. It's too fucking much. And the way they write events now, you kind of have to read it all. Like there might be a couple of titles that aren't necessary, but for the most part, there's going to be some throwaway line. And then a lot of things that happen in these events don't make any fucking sense when you read another book because editorial is shit right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I don't think I've ever read a Marvel event as it was coming out. I get the trades.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't read
the trades just for the main story, except for World War Hulk and Planet Hulk. I haven't really read all of the ancillary stuff that they throw in. It's just okay. What's the main story here? That's the only part I've ever read.
So to give you an idea of an event book, Secret Wars 2, the Beyonder just showed up on Earth
With Jerry curls.
and with Jerry curls. And there was 6 issues, or was it 12 issues?
Well, it
I
was
don't
9.
remember.
It was 9.
But there's also little tie-in guest star moments. He showed up at Peter Parker's house and he wanted to help Peter out.
Yeah.
And so he turned his apartment into gold.
No, he turned what was Luke Cage and Heroes for Hire? He turned their office building into gold. And Peter Parker was working in the area and thought about stealing a gold typewriter or some shit, but ended up not doing it.
He took a gold notebook.
I think he left it behind in the end because that.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was saying that you're having problems. Well, because what it was is he was trying to help out Luke Cage because they were having money problems. And he was like, oh, well, okay, I can fix that. And he turns their building into gold and it collapses under its own weight. That was that. But yeah, sorry. My Secret Wars nerd is showing.
Yeah. But I mean, things like that were a lot more tolerable because the event was compartmentalized and there would just be like the little cameo tie-in.
And you,
Yeah.
you know, you had 42 whole issues in that with 9 main story beats. And you didn't have to read all the little tie-in books. They were just nice little nods that were basically the tie-ins were basically advertisements for the actual event more than anything.
And that I'm okay with. I would be fine with that setup.
But
I don't want to have to read hundreds of fucking books to understand the whole story.
right. Well, again, like I said, Marvel recently, let me just see how many, their most recent event was Absolute Carnage.
Which is only 30 issues. So they
Oh,
might
okay.
have actually taken a cue. But
Maybe they listen to our show.
Maybe they do. But Absolute Carnage is mostly self-contained. Now, that's mainly a Spider-Man story. Let's look at the one before that, War of the Realms.
Which was
63
trash.
issues. Before that, Age of X-Man, which I didn't even know was a thing. Hopefully that's a small one. I didn't give a shit about that. Yeah, 32 issues. So it does seem like they've taken kind of a back seat to making these huge, overwhelming crossover events. Yeah.
So
the last 4 or 5 events have been really small.
the Asgard event, by the way,
Uh-huh.
when I asked Brian Hill about the comics he was writing in that, I said, "Do I have to read the rest of the event to understand your comic?" And he said no, and that was the only reason I bought his comics in the event.
So, yeah, it seems like Marvel has taken a little bit of a back seat because, let's see, Secret Empire, yeah, that was 77 books, and that was trash. Venomverse, that... So, yeah, I mean, they've taken that very well could be more of a necessity than anything else because they just can't afford to pay people to do all these fucking issues. They don't trust the talent they have, but I don't know.
I mean,
That
they
also
clearly
kinda
trust him
goes to
enough
show
to.
that also goes to show how checked out I've been from Marvel Comics for the last 5 years. I don't care anymore. Like, it doesn't matter. It's too little too late. I just can't give you my money because I don't trust you're going to put out anything good. You do shit like this Heroes Reborn thing where we have Doom or not, and I can't be fucked.
Fuck off, Dillard. That is
Oh, what's up, John?
But so I see the appeal of doing like brand wide events, but they're too often. Like, if you're gonna do something like that, it has to be like, oh, it's been like 10 years since we've done something like this. Let's, build up some hype and, do some massive thing where we tie every single thing together. Something like that. I could understand that from like a marketing standpoint and stuff like that, but
That was what I kind of looked at Secret Wars 2015 like, because again, I know I keep going back to it, and there will never be an episode where I don't talk about Secret Wars, but 2015 was Jonathan Hickman's kind of crescendo, his end-all be-all of his final Fantastic Four run and his Avengers run. And it did tie it all up together in a nice, neat little package, because he had been planting seeds for this storyline over the course of years. And when it all came together, if you had been following his work and you enjoyed that stuff, then you really liked it, like me. Now, at the same time, I can also look at it and say, okay, there is going to be a contingency of people out there who are pissed that their monthly Spider book got canceled for this bullshit. And I I understand that. Just because I liked the event doesn't mean I think that it was good for the industry as a whole. I don't
So wait,
think.
are you saying that perhaps Tom King has a book that he's going to put out, which is the penultimate mommy wife book about the mommy wife that saved the strong
Probably.
man?
I mean, is
You know,
Michael
he
Bendis-
wants
Brian Michael
those
Bendis
mommy
writing it?
milkers.
Exactly.
But no, I think that Jonathan Hickman had been writing the story of the Beyonders and Doom for so long, and had been driving home the story arc, and they finally gave it to him because it was established, and I feel like maybe he did too well on it because they gave him the reins of the X-Men, and that was kind of a shit show. Like, I wanted to like it so much, but I just couldn't. Yeah, we didn't even get to talk about the new Clone Saga, but we're rounding out the hour now.
Ugh.
The new Clone Saga is apparently in the works. I'm not excited. What about you, Larry? What do you think about it?
Well, I mean, the Clone Saga emerged organically out of one of Peter Parker's villains as Spider-Man. So, how do you justify Clone Saga with Miles, who doesn't have that whole organic thing with the Jackal?
Again, if you guys look, the suicide prevention hotline
12
number is
books.
on my name.
Original Clone Saga, 12 books.
Yeah.
Clone Saga 2. Let's see how big that one was. Also, how are you going to do it organically? Easy. What you're going to do is you're going to have
You aren't.
Clone of the Jackal. The second Clone Saga was 164 books.
Holy shit!
Yeah.
And it was only Spider books? Are you shitting me?
Yep.
Oh no, there was New Warriors in there. Okay, some New Warriors. New Warriors and Spider books. Wow. They hated us.
Why are you saying that in past tense? They still hate us.
Yeah, no, but man, that was... You don't understand, Ayrton. That was 1994.
Oh, fuck.
7 issues and Over the Edge, which was the event following that. I just... no, you have a clone of the Jackal that actually is Miles's aunt, and she finds out that Miles is Spider-Man and wants to clone him for reasons, and then
What are those reasons, Church?
for bad reasons, because she's evil. She's evil.
Oh, okay.
So she's a great villain because she's
Oh,
evil.
okay. I mean, yeah, that sounds about up to the writing part that we're used to.
But yeah, so instead of, because it can't be his uncle because his uncle's the Prowler, but it has to be maybe Dr. Octopus clones him so that he can grow a Miles body to put his brain into, because we haven't done that before.
Oh no, that's totally new and original.
Wait, isn't Dr. Octopus like the Spider-Man of San Francisco now?
No. What? No, he gave Peter's body back.
Right, but he was in a clone Peter body, I thought.
Man, I don't fucking know. Maybe that's what they'll base it on. Maybe his body will start breaking down.
Stop giving Marvel terrible ideas. Let's go back to giving them good ideas.
Now, I'd rather give them terrible ideas that they'll use.
Okay. So terrible ideas for Marvel. We put MJ in a clone body, but the clone body is a big black guy
who thinks it's Gwen Stacy.
Exactly.
as long as the big black guy has the red hair still.
And you have a big black guy in Mary Jane's body.
It's in one of those mohawks that like is.
And then you the only way to fix it is that Peter Parker has to bang one of them.
Just one?
No, both of them.
Okay, both of them simultaneously.
I mean, look, we're coming up with a way. We're coming up with a way for. Yeah, we're coming up with a way for Eric Larson to come back to Spider-Man.
Oh, okay, all right, excellent. No, because then he put Savage Dragon in it, and I don't want that. Anyway.
Well, I mean, who do you think the big black guy is going to be? It's going to be Savage Dragon.
That's right. Right. How scarred would Savage Dragon be if Peter Parker had to have sex with him in MJ's body?
I don't know. It's been very difficult to read Savage Dragon. He might like it at this point.
Anyway, final thoughts, gentlemen. So I can go, hate my life some more and cry at the porcelain throne.
Marvel Comics events are bad and unimaginative, and they should stop until they at least have somebody who has a new idea.
And suicide is not the answer.
In retrospect, I will say that having discovered that most of their events recently have been under 50 issues, I will to read and make Ayrton
God damn it.
so that we can talk about it and see if it was anywhere because again, let's be fair here, Ayrton. We haven't given Marvel a fair shake really since X-Men, and before that we hadn't given them a fair shake for anything written in the 2010s. So I mean, Absolute Carnage is
Can you find
30
me
issues.
Braille copies?
Yes.
So I
up,
don't have
Dillard?
to look at it.
Hey, Dillard.
What's going on, fellas? How are you?
Good. We were talking about event comics.
Yeah, I heard. What do you, I don't understand what you guys have against event comics.
How many?
Is it because like the events they put together are just not good enough for you, or?
They're just schlock,
correct.
and it's the equivalent of mainlining clickbait in comic book form.
Yeah, because I think like the main reason you want to have that kind of stuff in there is to just kind of remind people that they don't exist in the bubble on their own. They have people they can go to, like
Right,
Van Dyne can go down the street and hit up an actual genius.
Is there a reason it takes 170 issues to do that?
No, Marvel events are the watch mojo of the comic book industry.
Explain that.
Lowest common denominator shit that retards get excited about because
And there's never anything like clever or interesting.
Yeah.
I don't believe that. There's some clever and interesting stuff that happens.
Yeah. Well, we talked about that. Like I said, Age of Apocalypse was good. Secret Wars 2015 was good, in my opinion. I can see how it was executed poorly in some people's eyes. But Civil War, the original, was decent. Acts of Vengeance in the 70s was great. There are some good ones out there, but it feels like it's entirely too manufactured nowadays. Like we've gotten to the point where we're doing. The reason this came up is because they're planning a new Clone Saga and a new Heroes Reborn.
A new Clone Saga?
Yeah, with Miles Morales.
But it's with Miles this time, so it's different.
Yeah. But
Because, I mean,
Wait a minute.
God forbid we have an event with Miles that features Miles as a character.
yeah, let's not give him any character growth. Let's just shove him into something that Peter did 20 years ago. Now the thing is, part of the reason that I don't like events now, Dillard, just to condense this entire conversation, is because we've gotten to the point where the House of Ideas doesn't have new ideas. They just go back to old ones. We didn't need a Civil War 2. We didn't need a Secret Empire 2. We don't need a Heroes Reborn 2. And we don't need a Clone Saga 3, for fuck's sake. We didn't really need a Secret Wars 3, even though I like it because I'm a fucking fanboy.
But we did need a Heroes in Crisis.
No.
What?
No.
No, I'm just saying.
Basically,
I mean,
any book
doesn't that kind of come hand in hand? I mean, doesn't that something that's not necessarily an earmark of somebody that's a bad writer, but it's kind of just a symptom of how comic books never end?
Well,
Tom King's a bad writer.
It's not about bad writers either, though, because once you get into 200 and something issues, you have bad editors. You have people that can't keep shit together, so you have one character off doing one thing in their book, and then in another book, they're in a completely different place at the exact same time doing something different. And it can be bad. Like, it can just be terrible.
Like, you remember when The Simpsons did a crossover with Family Guy?
Yes.
And they also did a crossover with The Flintstones.
They also did a crossover with King of the Hill.
King of the Hill, right? And a lot of the times, these shows were actually ongoing when this was happening.
I have no idea.
It doesn't have any kind of weight to it. It doesn't feel good. There's no anticipation. But I recall when they did the voice of the crossover with Futurama. Everybody was interested because the thing is, Futurama was such a beloved show, and it had an ending, whether it wanted to or not. It had an ending, and people were they were just fiending for one more thing from them. You know what I mean? And it was like it was actually pretty good. It was like the only good crossover The Simpsons did, and I think because of the nature of Western comics that just go on like a soap opera forever and ever. They just don't have the weight. These crossovers don't matter. It's a different universe. Nothing matters, you know?
Not only that, but even when it's in the same universe, like we started off talking about Heroes Reborn, the original, right? Do you remember that one, Dillard? Well, you didn't really buy into that.
No, I don't read comics. That's for gays.
Yeah, you just write them. Now you just write and draw them.
I know what they like.
But anyway, Onslaught, the original Heroes Reborn was on the back of the Onslaught side, okay? And the whole Heroes Reborn thing came from, and I'm repeating myself now, so I'm going to give you 3 more minutes. And we're gonna
I'm sorry, I just got here.
I know. But the Onslaught saga ended when Franklin Richards basically opened a pocket dimension and brought back to life everyone that Onslaught had killed. And that and then that was in continuity. That was in the, that was on brand for everything that happened. They just put the toys back in the toy box. And that's why a lot of these crossovers, like a lot of these event comics, just have no weight to them, is because there is nothing to it. Like, at the end of it, everything just goes back to the way that it was to begin with.
Yeah, I think that's a flawed way of thinking on the creator's part. Like, for instance, there's always like really cool conversations to be had. Right? We had a conversation a month or so ago. We were talking about, who would win in a fight. This person versus that person.
Always,
and then it all boils right, and it always boils down to like what exactly is the scenario, and it doesn't really matter in their minds. It doesn't really matter what the scenario is. They have to break even. They have to draw, but like, there can be a clear winner. And there can be a specific scenario that happened that clear winner used to his advantage to clearly win. And people can say, well, yes, of course, and they can argue till they're blue in the face, and that's the fun part of arguing about it. Well, it was only because of X, Y, and Z. He had this advantage, that's why he won, blah, 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 blah. You can actually have an outcome where there's a winner, and people can still be satisfied because you can not only just balance the outcome, you can actually balance the interaction before the outcome. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And it's like every time I see a crossover or people meet up, they always end up having some sort of a mutual respect, and hey, you're good and I'm good. We're both good and that's good. Got a deal. I don't like it.
Let's put it into perspective, okay? It's not really that at all, because you have a situation where you have something like the original Civil War, not the movie, but the comic series, where at the end of it, after the disagreement between Iron Man and Captain America, Captain America was shot and killed, and that was a big fucking deal, because it was Captain fucking America shot and killed, and then all of a sudden, Captain
Yeah, but it
America's
wasn't
back.
Tony that killed him.
No, it wasn't, and it didn't matter. I mean, there was weight to that death because Captain America died admitting that he was wrong. Even though I don't think he was, but the thing is that not a few months later, Captain America's back alive. The longest death in comics, from what I remember, as far as Marvel and DC goes. I don't know about other places. I'm sure there are places that have permanently killed off characters.
Uncle Ben.
No. Well, no, because they brought Uncle Ben back and killed him again and rebooted and all this shit. No. Not Wally West. Barry Allen, 18 years. A superhero death, I meant, by the way. But Barry Allen, 18 years. Took them 18 years to bring him back to life. But there's a revolving door on death, so there's no weight to anything that happens in these books because there's always just a reset button. So what's the point of doing an event when everything just goes back to normal anyway? So that was your point. Is that
Yeah, there's no point to doing an event.
right? That's what I'm saying. Like, if you're going to tell a story, tell the story. But my whole argument that it doesn't need to interfere with the line of comics as they are. I think comics need to go back to being episodic. Maybe 3 or 4 issues can tie in together to tell one bigger story. But I don't think you need to interrupt Amazing Spider-Man to have Spider-Man swing into Civil War 2. I don't think you need to interrupt, whatever X-Men title there is right now to see what the X-Men are doing in Civil War 2 or Secret Empire. It doesn't feel right, and it feels like more of a cash grab when it's done like that. Whereas back in the day, when you had events where maybe one issue was part of this event, but then everything just kind of went back to, oh, well, what are you talking about? Acts of vengeance. It was more fair to the reader where you could say, hey, what's this acts of vengeance thing here in the corner? That's kind of weird. And then next month when you pick up your book, you're back to normal. You're back to basic if you didn't want to buy into that event.
I don't want that though. I want it to be bigger than that. I do want the events to be bigger, and like I don't fault the crossover between all of the titles for the Death of Superman, right?
Right.
Like I like that, and the thing is, it did get me going and getting some of the other books, but I want all of that. I want it to be important. I want it to interrupt. Like, this is a big deal, This is something that's a big deal that's happening in our shared universe. It needs to get dealt with. Like, I don't think that the outcomes are lasting and substantial enough to warrant that for these other.
You just mentioned an event that proves my point, though. Like, how many issues do you think were in Death of Superman? 11.
Was it 13? No.
11.
I thought it was 13.
There might have been a couple of closing issues or whatever that's not included, but 11 is what's listed on Comic Book Reading. Whereas Civil War II had 152 books. That's egregious, and that's my point. Like, you don't need 152 books to do something you can do in under 20. You don't need 230 books like Secret Wars 2015 had to do something that you basically accomplished in 9. I mean, that was a special case, in my opinion, because they stopped the entire Marvel line to tell that story. But at the same time, you told the story in 9 books, and you ended up printing 230 with Secret Wars on it. it's egregious. Whereas, like you said, Death of Superman, great event, crossed over 3 books, 4 books, and they told the story in 12 issues. I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with the original Clone Saga being 12 books. I don't have a problem with it, even with more recent events in Marvel where it's like 30, 20 books. It's when they got in that cycle of doing these 100-issue crossover, every book in the goddamn line has to be involved. And you have to read them all. You're not going to get the full story. Fuck that. Tell your story. Maybe have a couple of one-shots that tie into it. But I don't...
Did Larry fall asleep?
I think so.
Damn it, Church, you do this every time.
I didn't fall asleep. I'll mute him. That's fantastic. I was wondering what the fuck that was. All right. Well, that puts us at midnight. Let's.
I thought your sleep apnea finally caught up with it.
That was fantastic. Exciting stuff here on the Gospel of Comics, folks. Anyway, no, I get what you're saying, Billy. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily.
And I get what you're saying about the egregious amount of books. Like it did actually hit me pretty hard when I started collecting the metal when it was coming out, the Batman metal stuff, and then I ended up finding out that the books that I was collecting were like just one part of 4 parts, and I was like, oh, but there's like 14 I gotta get, and this is like 1 of 4 parts. God damn it! And I just quit.
Yeah, that's only 26 issues. Dark Knight's Metal.
Yeah.
That's still only 26. You got to understand, I got a long box in my closet for just Secret Wars.
Well, that's your fault.
I mean, I love the story. I mean, but even Age of Apocalypse, that was 60 books. You know, and I have that in my closet. I've got the second Clone Saga in my closet. I've got Civil War in my closet, and it just got to be too fucking much, man. Like, tell your story.
You know, it was a great event.
What?
A fantastic event. And nobody agrees with me. Marvel Zombies.
Oh, Marvel Zombies was amazing. I love Marvel Zombies.
Yeah, Marvel Zombies.
I didn't like
fun as
Marvel
shit.
Zombies
What are you
2 and
talking about?
3.
I mean,
4 and 5.
And 7 and 12 and 36.
Let's see. Marvel
oh,
Zombies.
he's awake.
Is he back? I don't know.
Want to break in on that?
Oh, okay. Here you are. I thought
You fell asleep. We all heard you.
Hey man, I got a little respiratory deal.
But
But yeah, I did really enjoy that one, and I think that should have been a lot more impactful to the main story. It was a good story, and I think that like I'm like of two minds, right? I either wanted to have no bearing whatsoever and be in Elseworlds with an ending, or I wanted to 100% impact canon and make sure it's meticulously adhered to.
Apparently, Marvel Zombies, they've made it one event starting in 2005 that ran until 2015, and it's 116 issues total. But the original Marvel Zombies book was just 5 books. And then it was Ultimate Fantastic Four, 20 through 23 and 30 through 32.
I think they had a one-shot.
Yeah. And Dead Days, yeah.
Mm.
And Army of Darkness was part of that.
I have that still.
Yeah, I mean, there was some good stuff in that, and I don't disagree that there are exceptions to the rule, but no, events are just, they're entirely too egregious in certain areas, like you said, like I said, and then you agreed. But when it comes to having, if you can tell the story in 12 books, tell it in 12 fucking books. You know, if you can't tell the story in 12 books and you need to tell the story over the course of, a couple dozen, 4 trade paperbacks, like 52. 52 was a great event, in my opinion. The original 52, not new 52. But the original 52 was a great story.
Look, we need you to buy all of the mainline crossovers, plus the main event crossover lines, plus the specialized team books that we're making just for the event.
What happened? It all got quiet. Why is there a phone number next to Ayrton's name?
That's a suicide.
It's
hotline.
a suicide prevention.
Yeah, suicide prevention hotline number.
That's what we need to bring back. Remember the beginning of last year? It was really cool when everybody thought there was going to be World War III and all those memes were going out everywhere. That was fantastic.
Well, I mean, there's going to be World War III. Joe Biden's loading up the military into the Middle East.
Everybody was showcasing how clever they could be with their cowardice.
That was in the first half hour.
Yeah. We were originally going to talk about
the church.
Huh? What?
Who wanted to end it all that necessitated this hotline number to be up here?
Anybody listening to us talk about
Saga.
Marvel? Yeah, anybody listening?
Yeah, because we're talking about Marvel. What do you mean?
The Spider Clone Saga was not well received.
But anyway, no.
I'll be honest, I didn't read that.
No, and I think that there's a time and a place for the event, and we all have different ideas. Like Larry isn't, against the idea of doing big crossovers where you have multiple titles, maybe just contain them a little bit more.
Yeah, just contain them a little bit more, and also don't do them all the time.
And I think that if you're going to do an event, it should be a 12-issue maxi series titled under that event, and not fuck with the main line. Have your one-shots, have your maxi series, and be done with it. So everybody's going to have some different opinions, but I do think that events need a massive overhaul. And from what I can tell,
I agree with you for everything, except I think that they should break from their series, and they should have, Spider-Man number 151, but then / book 2 of this event. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And, that could be done better. And they've done a fair job collecting some of these books in omnibuses, but that fucks up trade paperback collecting. And that's one thing that I can say is, if you're going to read an event in the trade, it needs to be written, or it needs to be printed chronologically, not, issue by issue. Because sometimes in these, especially with shit like Civil War, you would have 2 issues, and there would be 14 books that happened in between those 2 issues, but they're printed in the trade side by side. So that's one problem with these big overarching.
Yeah, you confused me with that sentence. I can just imagine how confusing it would be if you were the reader.
Right. Well, it's like I say.
That's because English is your second language, Dillard.
That's not true. You're a liar.
He is a liar. Anyway,
don't make me call him a
but here's a question, Dillard.
Okay.
When are we going to see a crossover for the Buckler?
that's right.
Likely, it's not going to be until the 4th book.
Okay.
Because I have this story, and I'm not going to be able to squeeze in a crossover probably until the Buckler meets the Canadian Shield in book 4.
Okay. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, I've been trying to get off the air for half an hour now, so we're going to leave on that note. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me.
See what you do, Dillard.
It's not it's not your fault,
all right.
Dillard. You missed the part about the bad chicken, but I have.
But Mommy said it was my fault.
Yes, everything's your fault. Anyway, gentlemen, Dillard, you guys have a good night.
All right.
And